do not record. We do not record the Q&A portion. You may have noticed donation boxes by the doors and up front. We ask for your support to donate. In the past, we used to ask for $3 per talk or a $50 donation for the entire year. It's up to you how much you want to donate to us, but we have been paying, even though we've not been collecting at the door, we've been paying our speakers. So every little bit helps. Thank you. And for those at home, you're welcome to donate to Symposium on the Oakmont Foundation website, the Oakmont Community Foundation. Just be sure to designate that the Symposium is the recipient of your donation.
You're not, you're muted at the moment.
The door, if you like. Are there any other announcements? Well, then it's my great pleasure to introduce to you Heather Irwin. Heather is the dining editor for Sonoma Magazine and for the Press Democrat. She's also the founder of Bite Club, which jabs an irreverent fork at the local restaurant scene. She's an avid eater and writer and has 15 years of experience covering local restaurants, chefs, and food. She's been a journalist for more than 25 years. She's a Jefferson Award winner and was CEO and founder of Sonoma Family Meal. She was honored by the Community Child Care Council for Sonoma Family Meal's work during the Tubbs Fire. Heather holds a master's degree in journalism from Northwestern University. She says she's moved 32 times and moved, settling in Sonoma County in 2003. And Heather has a very quirky dachshund that likes to stare at her while laying on her pillow. And with that, I turn it over to Heather.
Thank you. So I don't need the mic.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, but thank you. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Unfortunately, I think some of that is a couple years old. I now have two quirky dachshunds. They're dachshund mixes, and we rescued them, and we rescued one of them during COVID. And boy, she is a handful, but those are my writing partners during the day, Chloe and Leafy, and they do like to stare at me as I write. So thank you so much for having me here today. I really appreciate you guys thinking of me, and I know this is still kind of an odd time. This is my first time back speaking to an audience in person, so I'm thrilled to be here. I kind of wanted to make today a little bit free form. I'll talk for a few minutes kind of about my history and what I do. But I think one of the most fun things to do when you have presentations is for the audience to get involved and for you to ask me the questions that you've been dying to ask me. Hopefully there's a few of them. We already started having a little conversation just waiting, so I hope you'll have some questions for me. So with that said, there's three things that I want you guys to walk away with today. When I go to lectures or speeches or whatever, I kind of try to take at least one thing away. You know, if I'm sitting there for an hour, I want to take at least one poignant piece of information. There's three I want you to take away today. One is I want you to find a new restaurant that you want to try. So that'll be something we can talk about, some new restaurants I've been, somewhere you might want to go. Another is how you can support restaurants right now in Sonoma County, because I think that's a question a lot of people have. Is it safe? You know, Is it, should I leave a tip if I have bad service? All of these things are really good questions. And then I have a few answers, I think. And the third thing that I think is one of the most important things is I want you to walk away thinking about how you as elders can contribute to your community. And I'll tell you a little bit about my experience with my Wise Women Council. So yes, I am the dining editor of the Press Democrat and Sonoma Media Investments, which sort of includes, I'm sure most of you know this, the Index Tribune, the Argus Courier. We own the Gazette now, Sonoma Magazine, as I said, just basically all the local media. So part of my job is to help coordinate some of that dining coverage from every, corner of the county. I also have a blog, and I started the first blog at the Press Democrat called Bike Club. And that started in, I think it was about 2006, when my boss came to me and said, at the time I was just a producer, an online producer. She said, "Do you want to do a blog?" I said, "Well, why not? Sure." Well, it was the first blog that the PD ever did. I had no idea what I was doing, but I just went to restaurants. I sort of talked to people. I found out new and interesting things happening at these places, and I wrote about it in a way that I thought was at least entertaining. I don't call myself a food critic for several reasons. One is because in Sonoma County, we have a very close-knit community, and we have some very excellent restaurants, but we're not New York, we're not Chicago, we're not LA. I think that it's important to write about food in a way that makes sense to people who are actually eating at restaurants. Lagar is one of the most popular restaurants in Sonoma County. It doesn't have any Michelin stars. It doesn't have any of those fancy things that you hear about in Healdsburg. It's a place that people love to go. Whether I like it or not, I don't think really matters. I think it's what people love in this county. So what I try to do is write the story of the restaurant and the chef and find things on the menu that I think are really good, that are something I would recommend that someone eat. If I don't like something, I do critique things sometimes and say, hey, this could be better, this could be different. But for the most part, I think that the critiques in a small community like this are just kind of mean-spirited, basically. If I really dislike a restaurant, I don't write about it. So that's kind of how I work as a writer. So I started this blog in 2006, and it just kept going and going. It was receiving millions of page views a year at that time. Right now on Sonoma Magazine, the digital work that I do, we get about 2 million page views a month. So it has a really broad reach. A lot of people are reading this stuff. It has a far broader reach than the newspaper, which I'm sure you guys can imagine. Now, show of hands, no stress. Who gets the print version of the Press Democrat? Great, you guys are, thank you. Anybody get digital? Print plus digital. Okay, great. So in a younger demographic, it would be completely opposite. One, you know this, very few people would get the newspaper at all. Very few people would even look at it online or pay for a subscription. A younger demographic just don't find the news as important, which is really tragic because right now we're seeing newspapers around the country and around the world, especially in small towns and smaller regions like we are, going away, leaving a gaping hole in news coverage. The newspaper is here to be a watchdog. We're here to inform, entertain, and be a watchdog. And when your community doesn't have that watchdog anymore, and it doesn't have an outlet for businesses, to either advertise or, write stories about, the businesses suffer as well. So, we all really want to get kids, younger people to value the news. We all value the news because we understand how important it is and how important it is to have a print publication. So that's my little soapbox. Like my kids, I'm a recent empty nester. I have 2 children, and my kids don't read the news. They look online, they look on Snapchat, they read on social media, and they don't support local media, which is really frustrating to me. But that's just how their generation is, and I think all of us are trying really hard to figure out how we can change along with the times. So that's something that we continue to work on. And as dining editor, I'm always looking for new ideas on, how we can engage people with dining information. Pictures, we know, get lots of page views. People love to click on galleries and look at pictures. So I take most of my own photography, for better or worse, because I think it's really important to be able to show people, what you're doing. Picture's worth 1,000 words, right? And people aren't reading 1,000 words anymore. They want to read 200 or 300, very short attention spans. So that's another thing that we're really working hard to do, is find new ways to get the information out there. I was doing a podcast for a little while. Boy, is that hard work. But doing a podcast, doing the web, doing things like this, where we're out in the community speaking to people. I think it's really important for us to remain relevant in this age. All right, so that's a little bit of my history at the PD. See if I lost any really exciting pieces of information. Yeah. So I've been working there since for about 18 years, I think now. It's the longest I've ever worked anywhere. I did move 32, 36 times, something like that in my life. My dad was a project engineer. So we moved from town to town, usually on my birthday. In September, we usually moved in. I spent my birthdays in a hotel. But it was a really great way for me to learn about life in different parts of this country. So Ohio, St. Louis is where I went to high school. We lived in Houston, Texas. We lived in Bismarck, North Dakota. Then I moved on to Chicago, Washington, D.C., Portland, you name it, I've probably lived there. That also gave me a real passion for food and learning the regional food, learning about barbecue in Tennessee and in Texas, learning about, I'll tell you a story about casseroles, but learning about casseroles and hot dish in the Midwest where I grew up, very comforting food. Learning about on the West Coast seafood, being in Portland when their dining scene was really, really becoming a big deal. So I think that that's given me a real passion for food. I grew up in a family where my mother, bless her heart, we had a special dish which she made each week called chicken boring, and it was chicken with Lowry seasoning salt on it, and that was chicken boring, and that was sort of the highlight of her repertoire. That and canned peas. So neither of which I can stand eating anymore. But my grandma though was a gourmet chef, and I did learn a lot from her. So that's kind of where I got my interest in food. But I want to talk a little bit about, is there anyone here that's going to be really, I want to talk about the fires a little bit. I hope nobody's super triggered by that. I know it's upsetting to us all, but I'll keep it top end. Okay. So when the Tubbs Fire happened in 2017, I was working at the paper, and I was a dining editor, and I had spent years getting to know the chefs here. And I feel like I had a lot of good relationships with them. So I was at the paper, and the Starks restaurant burned down, Willie's wine bar burned down, and there wasn't a whole lot for me to write about though in this chaos of what was happening. And at the same time, my family had been displaced. My grandmother and my parents, who lived in Bennett Valley, were displaced. They evacuated. They couldn't find anywhere to go because the hotels were gouging. And so they ended up at a friend's farm out in Sebastopol. And it was a beautiful little farmhouse. And they couldn't figure out how to feed themselves. Everybody was so traumatized that my mom was just going to Oliver's and picking up frozen things. And we had 8 people out there, everybody trying to just figure out what was happening at the moment. And I decided that it would be important for people to be able to have a meal to take where they were, to be able to have like a big frozen dinner or a big meal. Wherever they were staying, they could have food there together. And so this idea started ruminating in my head about, how can I help people to have food, have good, nourishing food where they are? And at the same time, chefs were calling me saying, hey, we have all this food. We want to make food. We want to help. We want to be a part of this. How can we help? Well, things were in such chaos at that time that, it was really difficult to sort of figure all this out and put everything together. And so what I ended up doing was going on TV, saying that I was going to launch this chef food distribution program the next day. I actually had no idea what I was doing. I didn't actually know how I was going to possibly pull this off. But I called a friend of mine, John Franchetti, from Franchetti's restaurant. And I said, can I borrow your restaurant for a day? We're going to just have chefs bring in food. We're going to redistribute it out to people, survivors, and we'll sort of see how it goes. I'm sorry if I'm puffing and puffing a little. It's hard with the mask on. They asked if I'd leave it on, so that's fine. Just wanted you to know why I'm sort of puffing and puffing. Well, I want to respect that I was asked to keep it on. I just wanted to explain that. It's fine. So anyway, what ended up happening was I started Sonoma Family Meal. It was a nonprofit. Well, it wasn't a nonprofit at the time, but it was basically a way for me to work with the chefs, have them bring in food, us repackage it into aluminum pans, and then distribute to anyone who needed food, anyone in the community who needed food. It was all word of mouth. We had no funding. It was just sort of everybody come together and help. We were all so traumatized. So I thought this would happen. I thought this would go on for a couple of days. My husband said, how long are we going to do this? I said, oh, a couple of days, it'll be fine. That ended up being a couple of weeks. We ended up in 7 different kitchens. We went from kitchen to kitchen to kitchen. We went to Council on Aging was the last kitchen we were in. And by the end of about 2.5 weeks, I think 3, we had done 20,000 meals. Just putting stuff into pans, chefs working full time. The Starks gave us 2 of their chefs full time, the chefs from Willie's Wine Bar. So they came and cooked for us full time. We ended up cooking 20,000 meals for survivors, which was really cool, and it was really exciting. But it was also, it just happened. None of us really knew what happened. It almost killed me. It was so hard to do because I didn't know what I was doing. But we realized after sort of all of that happened that there was going to be a long-term need. There were going to be people who were not going to be resettled anytime soon. When you lose 5,000 homes, people aren't going back into homes anytime soon. So over the Christmas break, I created a 501c3, which is a nonprofit. We ended up having an emergency nonprofit, so we got it much more quickly than other places. But that's what I did on my Christmas break. And in January, we started a pilot program for survivor families. And basically what it was is anybody through word of mouth who had a FEMA number, whether you lived in Fountain Grove or you lived in Journey's End, whether you lived in wherever. We didn't ask for your status as an immigrant. We didn't ask for your income level. We didn't ask for anything. We did kind of focus on families and seniors because those were the people that were really struggling the most, we realized. So we created a program with $0 to provide 4 family 4-packs, 4 complete meals each week for those families to pick up and take where they were staying. Some of these families had moved 7 or 8 times in a few months, going from rental to apartment to wherever. And it was really traumatic on the families. Mom was trying to get the kids into new schools. I mean, I'm sure some of you can imagine or know personally what that was like. And the last thing that anybody wanted to do at night was to make dinner. So we ended up doing that for almost 2 years. So that was something I was really proud of. And it was really an amazing situation. And so I'm really glad that we were able to do that. We have continued on through the fires, through Kincaid. We've continued on. So we worked the Kincaid fires. We've worked every fire since then. And most recently, COVID. COVID happened. What are we going to do for COVID? Oh my goodness. There are a lot of people in need. And what do we do about that? We were fortunate enough to be funded by the county. And what we ended up doing is supporting restaurants to make the food for us. And then we would pay them for that food. We worked with a number of nonprofit agencies throughout the county to be able to distribute that food to these different people that needed it. So we worked with Council on Aging that was doing a large distribution. We worked with Corazon and La Luz and many other agencies. Over the year and a half that we have been doing this, we've served 250,000 meals. We've given back we paid $1.7 million to our restaurant partners. And we have, thank you. It's been a real project to do. And I'm proud that our county has been so supportive, and we've had so many people engaged in this because there's still a need. We still have people that are not homed from Tubbs fires. We still have people that went over the edge in Kincaid. We have so many people in this community that are unseen. And that's something that I really learned in doing Sonoma Family Meal is the unseen in our community, whether that's farm workers, who are forced to work during the fires, families, multi-generational families where there's 8 or 9 people in a home, and they are trying to, they all get COVID, and nobody can go out and get food. Again, many seniors that are at home by themselves that don't have support. That's another thing that's been really difficult for me to see. And I'm grateful that we were able to help, because it's a large group of individuals, especially, we saw the folks from Journey's End that just really struggled to get back on their feet, if at all. So that's kind of what Family Meal is about. And I'm proud to say that we have a new executive director who started this week. So I no longer have to do that. I can focus on my real job at the Press Democrat. So yeah, that's sort of the story of how I got here and what I've done. One thing I wanted to talk about, this is where I want to talk about the Wise Women Council and the importance, I think, of the elders in our community to make sure that they are giving back the wisdom that they hold. When we're young, we want to change everything. Everything that's come before is stupid. Oh, it's stupid. We're going to change it all. Well, that's great when you're young and you do that and you do all the new things, and our society needs that. But as I reached a riper age, I'm 52 now, 51, I realized that there were so many women in our community, and men, but I just happened to find a group of women that I call my Wise Women Council. Most of them work for me at Family Meal, donate their time at Family Meal. And I have learned such an incredible amount from these women. They have shared with me, their business experience, their experience in the world, their experience, with food, their experience with their children, their experience with, let's be honest, going through menopause, their experience with so many things that I find so valuable. And it sort of breaks my heart that so often younger people don't look for that counsel, or aren't offered that counsel, or don't find a way to connect with that counsel. And I would just challenge all of you, I'm sure many of you are already very involved with other organizations, but to really find those organizations where you can share your wisdom, because it's so important right now, especially right now, for us to be able to gain that knowledge from our elders. With that said, I get the impression that maybe you guys might want to ask some questions or have some thoughts. I'd love to kind of engage with you and talk a little about restaurants and how I go about restaurant work and how I go about being a critic. Does anybody want to ask any questions? I'll repeat the questions for our Zoom audience. I can just
Hear me? There we are. So to ask questions, we ask that you come up to the microphone, please. Or George, you're monitoring the chat and you can come in with questions.
If you don't want to stand up, I can also just repeat it.
If I can just clarify for the people on Zoom, use the chat, or if you can raise your hand, and we'll call on you.
Anyone? Sure.
Well, let me lead off with a question from Zoom, if I can, then, Heather.
Okay.
A lot of us have done takeout during the last 18 months, more than we're used to. In your experience, some of the better restaurants probably are better at having takeout you can bring home, pick up at the restaurant and bring home,
Yeah.
and other kinds of food don't travel well. Okay.
Yes.
Any obvious recommendations?
Oh boy, that's a really good question. I'm going to be totally honest with you. Takeout food has been a giant disappointment throughout the entire COVID. And I blame a couple of things. The packaging. The packaging is really difficult. So when you put something hot and crispy into a package that, for takeout, and it just sort of steams in there, it becomes very unpleasant. Now, there's a lot happening, I find this fascinating, in the packaging world to create packaging that allows things to stay crispy for longer. And I met a chef recently that found this really unique packaging that had special little holes in the top. It had like a little grill, like little raised edges on the bottom for the food to sit on. And I do KZST every Friday morning. And he brought this package of, I can't remember what it was, but it was something fried. And it was so delicious. It had stayed crispy and it had stayed warm the whole time. So I think that's one thing that chefs are trying to figure out. They're also trying to figure out a lot of other things, like how they can make food that's going to be yummy in a package when it, whether it's DoorDash, which is the worst because it sits there waiting for DoorDash or one of the other delivery services for a half hour. And then it's in the car for another 15, 20 minutes. By the time you get it, it's just this cold, gloopy mess. There's nothing you can do about it. Sometimes you can put it back in the oven, that'll work. But generally it's just pretty miserable. There's a couple places I did go to that spent a lot of time and energy on making beautiful takeout. One was Single Thread up in Healdsburg. It's a 3 Michelin star restaurant. They made these very elaborate takeout dishes with pages of notes about how you braise this and then take this out and gently sauce it over this. It's a whole involved concept, but that was a lot of fun. Also, Valette up in Healdsburg did a really fun takeout where again everything was beautifully placed in the boxes, and anything that was gloopy or wet would come in a container that you could pour over the top, stuff like that. So I think they're still figuring it out. Like I said, I think a lot of chefs I've talked to are just saying, we just can't do the kind of meals that we did before. They just won't work. So it doesn't make sense for them. It's too expensive. I mean, when you add packaging, expensive packaging, it can add another $1 or $2 to your cost. And unfortunately, when you're adding that much to your cost, the margin's already so slim at 5 to 6% that it's just sort of creates a really difficult situation for them. So they're just not even bothering to do it anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Has anybody had great takeout? Like extraordinary takeout? No. At this point, we're just trying to support the restaurants, I think. That's been the most difficult thing.
Okay, so we've decided that we are going to pass around the microphone. So please raise your hand.
Oh, sure. Okay, whatever you guys want to do.
Yeah, hi, my name's
Hi.
Anne.
Hi.
Hi, and I moved to Oakmont 5 days before the fire and evacuated with everybody. So, yeah, so now I feel like I belong here.
Yeah.
I actually moved from Santa Cruz to Oakmont. Anyway, long story short, my friend who is from Rochester, New York, is coming to visit me, and she lives in Hawaii now.
Oh,
What restaurants would you recommend for her and I to share?
okay. Well, that's a question I always ask. What do you like?
We like everything.
You
We
like
love to
everything.
eat.
Okay. Just anything. Wow, that's always the hardest question I get when these sort of open-ended questions. I'll just throw out a few things that I really like. Okay. Up in Healdsburg, you kind of can't go wrong. But 2 places I really like, especially up there, are Valette and Barn Diva, which just got a 1 Michelin star, which is pretty exciting.
Understand the name.
Barn Diva and Valette. Yeah, Valette is Valette, and Barn Diva, Barn, Barndiva. Those are two that I really like. There's also a new place that just opened called the Matheson, and it's really cool. It's impossible to get into, but downstairs they have a sort of a fine dining experience, and they have an entire wall. I believe there's over 60. Have you ever seen the wine sort of dispensers? They have them at the Barlow as well. It's pretty neat. They have a wall of these machines, for lack of a better word, where you can punch in, I want a taste, a quarter glass, a half glass, a full glass, and you put your wine glass underneath and it dispenses it. You get a card, basically, like a credit card that you put in with a certain amount of money. What's really fun about this is they have some wines, they have, $1,000 a bottle wines there, and you can have a taste. Or they have, so many different wines that you can just go through and have a little taste and really get to sample some amazing wines. That's a lot of fun. Upstairs at the Matheson, they have a place called Rooftop 106, something like that. And that's a more casual kind of bar cafe. Both have full bars. And it's a pretty much of a scene right now. It's quite the scene. So going to Roof 106. I also,
Excuse me, would you spell the name of that restaurant?
the Matheson, it's spelled Matheson, Matheson in Healdsburg. Thank you. Okay, I see the pens coming out. This is good. Okay, so another place I really like to go with a real diversity of restaurants is the Barlow over in Sebastopol. Barlow, the Barlow. And that's a great little place that has all kinds of different restaurants. So one of my favorite sushi restaurants is called Kosho, 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 is in that area. And you can also go, they have a little outdoor area where you can grab less expensive things. There's a place called Barrio that has tacos. The Farmer's Wife has grilled cheese sandwiches. There's just, let me tell you this other cool thing. Sorry, I get really excited about this. There's also a bunch of, what do you call it? The place where they make beer. Brewery, yeah. They have those, and they can't actually sell food. So what happens is if you go to the tap rooms there, you can order food from any of the restaurants in the Barlow, and they'll deliver it to you. And that's a lot of fun. They also have, I was talking about the wine, the pouring wine thing. My brain's, okay. Dispensers, thank you. They also have the wine dispensers at a place called Region at the Barlow. And that's a real fun place. You can do that same thing with the dispensers and get food delivered to you there. So the Barlow is a really fun place to take people if you have picky eaters or everybody wants something different, and you can wander around and explore. They have lots of shops there. They have galleries. They have it's a really fun place. I highly recommend it. It does get crowded. So that's another really fun place to go. Just thinking, Santa Rosa. What do I say about Santa Rosa? Santa Rosa has really struggled downtown. There's not much I can really recommend downtown, but I always like the restaurants, the Stark restaurants. So there's you want me to spell Bird in the Bottle. They have Willie's Wine Bar. It's WILLI''S. Bird in the Bottle, I call my office away from my office. It's a place where I end up going and taking friends a lot because I like everything on their menu. It's very eclectic, but they also have great cocktails. You can go have a glass of wine. Last week, Terry Stark, who's one of the owners, I walked in just wanting to have a glass of wine after a long day. And she was just sitting at the bar, and we just caught up. And that's the kind of thing I really like about our local restaurant scene, is that the owners are really approachable a lot of the time, and also the chefs. It's such a fun thing to be able to get to talk to and meet the chefs and really learn what's going on in their heads. What's something new that they're working on? Do they have a new restaurant concept they're working on? I'll give you one last one. Grossman's, it's called Grossman, Grossman. Now that's down in Railroad Square in Santa Rosa, and it's a Jewish deli, and she calls it Jew-ish. It's a New York style deli, is what Terry kind of calls it. So you can get the great New York style deli, the corned beef, latkes, just whatever you get at a New York deli, basically. Chopped liver, yes. Fresh bagels. They have a really good chicken liver pate though at Bird and Bottle. It's my absolute favorite. I love Grossman's. I get the vegetarian. They have a vegetarian platter, and it's so good. It has, pita bread, and it's just like a mezza platter. It's fantastic. Love that. Okay.
So Heather, we have lots more questions, especially on Zoom, but there's one more in the audience here before
Okay.
we turn it over to George.
Sure.
I just wanted to ask, is that too loud? When you review a restaurant, do they know you're coming?
Uh-huh.
And do they realize who you are?
And do you get paid? Do you have to buy the food?
Oh, good question. Do I have to buy the food too? Okay, all good questions. Do they know I'm coming? Mostly no. Once in a while, I will tell them because I need to talk to the chef and I'm in a hurry. Or they see me. Most of the chefs know who I am. Now, when I'm going to a more casual spot, a Mexican taqueria or a Peruvian restaurant, family-owned Peruvian restaurant or something like that, a Chinese restaurant. No, absolutely, they have no idea who I am, nor do they care. So it's a mix for sure. I do pay. I do have a expense account to pay for the food. I've always felt that it was very important that we pay for the food. The restaurants are not running a charity. And I have a real pet peeve about influencers, social media influencers and bloggers who come and take free food. They take all these comps and then they don't write anything, or they write some glowing review. Social media influencers make me mental because I spent a lot of years in journalism learning my craft and honing my craft. And when you have people that are coming in and have no understanding of food or the experience, and they're not really trying to tell a story, they're just taking selfies, it's really discouraging, shall I say? It's discouraging. So I don't have a lot of nice things to say about those kinds of people. But you also get the Yelp reviewers who want to write a tome about their experience on Yelp and criticize a server or something they didn't like, and it really drops the star. It really drops the reputation of a restaurant, and that's something that a lot of restaurateurs get very frustrated with. Is grudge, people with a grudge. And in fact, there have been numerous cases, even here in Sonoma County, where chefs have told me, someone will come in and say, I'm an elite Yelp reviewer. I want free food. If you don't give me free food, I'm going to write a nasty Yelp. And I think, wow, that is really unfortunate. It's a brave new world out there. I mean, chefs are they're having to change everything they do on a daily basis because it's just so difficult to keep up with what's new. Running a restaurant isn't like it was 10 years ago. It's a completely different animal. And after COVID, a lot of them are saying, I don't know what this business is anymore. This isn't the business I got into. It's something completely different, and are really getting discouraged and leaving. Just saying, I'm going to go find something that pays better, has better hours, and doesn't have this kind of hassle. So that's what's unfortunate and scary.
George, you have questions?
Yeah, I'm going to call on Sharon first, and then Colleen, who had a question about staffing, and then Gabriel, who had a question about a specific area. So Sharon, would you like to ask your question?
Yes. Climate change is an enormous issue we're dealing with now. and animal agriculture is a big contributor to climate change. We are encouraged to eat less meat and move to a more plant-based diet.
Yes.
The press Democrat food pictures feature so much meat. We have so many wonderful, so much wonderful produce grown right here in Sonoma County, but not enough coverage. Local restaurants seem to be in denial about this issue as well, sometimes with only one offering or none. When we go out, we already know how to make a plain green salad. So be nice to have some more offerings. Thank you.
Oh, I love that you said this, because just in the time that I've worked, it has been such a radical difference. You know, when, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, do you remember like the whole bacon phase and the meat and the butchers and meat? That was a big phase, and we are definitely changing. We are definitely looking at our diets. We're looking at the environment. We're very much needing to change how we consume. And I do hear your complaint or your comment, and I do honor it. It's one of those things that you're right, and I don't know how to change it. I've been thinking a lot about it. I had an animal activist confront me the other day, a very, very angry animal activist. I've come up against a number of people that have very strong feelings and are very frustrated with me and with the paper and with the meat eaters at large. I think it's something that we're going to have to do better. We will have to do better. Chefs are thinking about it a lot more now, and I do see a lot more vegetarian and vegan, plant-based food on menus. That's what they're calling it now, rather than saying vegetarian or vegan, which kind of hold political connotation and are not inclusive of flexitarians or omnivores, people who kind of eat everything. They're calling it plant-based restaurants. I think that in the past, a lot of the vegan or vegetarian restaurants have been not very spectacular for eaters. They've been kind of sad, to be honest. You know, I've gone to plenty of restaurants that have, you know, vegan food, and the food is terrible. You know, it lacks flavor, it lacks originality, it lacks ideas, but that is changing. That is absolutely changing. I got a pack of vegan charcuterie this week. So salami, you know, basically that is made from plants. It was made from seitan. It's a wheat gluten. It wasn't to my taste, but I loved the idea of it. I did a big story about the vegan dairies. So Miyoko's and and there's another one, the Sonoma Brinery. They're doing vegan butters, vegan cheeses, vegan cream cheese, vegan sour cream. And I found most of those to be extraordinary. I think Miyoko's butter is better than a lot of the European butters. It was fantastic. It does digest a little bit differently than butter, but I love the idea of it. And Miyoko is an animal activist. They are actually trying to build a farm here. They're trying to get a farmer to come to Sonoma County and grow the things they need for their vegan products. So nuts and I don't know all the goes oils, you know, sunflower oils and things like that. And they've got no interest, which is interesting to me.
Well, you always have our favorite here, which is you always have our favorite takeout, which is Amy's.
Oh, I love Amy's. I do love Amy's.
Okay.
Miyoko.
So we have Colleen with a question about staffing, then Gabriel, and then Raina.
What? Okay.
Colleen?
Hi, thanks, George. I'm actually I had 2 questions up. I think I'm gonna ask my second one, if that's okay with you.
Do it.
Heather, thanks so much. This is really interesting. And I'm not ready for prime time, so you will only see my name, not my visual.
Okay.
The Santa Rosa downtown area, you know, the Corda Square, 4th Street, et cetera, is really quite a sad place to go. We hear comments about this. We see comments about it in the PD all the time. Restaurants and small local businesses have long talked about how unattractive to visitors the area is, and credits this as a call for the lack of local support. And I'm wondering if you, as a prominent voice in the restaurant world, have any thoughts about or ways to create a important call to action to our planners. It supports restaurants directly. It supports the vibrancy of the downtown area in Santa Rosa that's actually called for in the city's general plan. So I'd love to hear your comments on that.
I have some very strong, perhaps not completely informed, but somewhat informed from the restaurant point of view, thoughts about that. Santa Rosa is very business unfriendly. I'm going to just put that out there, especially for restaurants. Permitting is nightmarish. Doing anything downtown is nightmarish. There are many infrastructure problems downtown that the restaurants go through. The sewers are not adequate. The buildings themselves, many are not up to code. And so what happens is when a restaurant leaves and a new restaurant goes in, it sparks this whole situation where the new restaurant has to be in compliance with laws that maybe the previous restaurant didn't have to be in compliance with. Let me give you an example. ADA compliant bathrooms. Now, of course, every restaurant should have compliant bathrooms. One of the problems is that old buildings do not allow for easily updating to compliancy. It can cost $150,000 just to make one bathroom compliant. That is onerous for a restaurateur. And then they're going to find out that then the sewer breaks, and one sewer breaks, several restaurants are impacted. Downtown is just a hot mess. And if they truly, truly want to make it better, then there's going to need to be some heavy, heavy investment in infrastructure. They're also going to need to stop with the silliness with parking. I'm sorry, I think it's absolutely ridiculous that the parking is so challenging downtown, especially now when you have the little parklets. There's even less parking. The parking that does exist, I mean, I feel like they're just looking for people to ticket. And that's just not something, when you have people visiting downtown and they're getting $30 tickets, that's just not a way to get people to come downtown. The other major problem is the unhoused. It is filthy. It is gross. There aren't toilets. These people are using business storefronts as toilets. It's difficult when you've got panhandlers, you've got people on drugs, laying out on the street. It's just that I feel that Santa Rosa has not taken this seriously. And homelessness is a very challenging and difficult problem with no easy answers. But unfortunately, it is just driving people away. I tried to find an office near downtown Santa Rosa for Family Meal. We looked at over a dozen offices, and all of them were overrun with homeless people, using them as toilets, using them to shoot up. And you just think, this is so unfortunate that I can't find a place in this entire city that's safe and that's not just sort of overrun. And until that is resolved, it's not going to get resolved.
George, before we go to more Zoom questions, we have an audience question.
Well, thank you for that information. Is there anything we could do about that situation in downtown Santa Rosa? We in Oakmont vote something?
Yeah, that's the real question. I think that yes, we need to talk to both our supervisors and our city council. They know this stuff, but it's always this vote, like, people don't want to spend more money for taxes and things like that.
Right.
I am not an super educated person politically. I just know what's wrong. The Metro Chamber
Right.
Santa Rosa Metro Chamber needs to be stronger. I think we just have a lot of people that are very unable or unwilling to make these kinds of drastic changes.
That's not my question, but since you were
Sorry.
talking about it, I asked. So my question, and I have a feeling after that, you're not going to have an answer either, but I was, I know there's good restaurants in Sebastopol,
Yeah.
but I don't really want to go that far usually if I'm going to be getting dinner for myself.
Yeah.
And same thing with Healdsburg.
Yeah.
So I try to go to places that are relatively close to Oakmont.
Yeah.
And I know we have Salt and Stone
Mhm.
and Palooza. I understand that I haven't really been there, but I've been there once, but I haven't. It was during COVID. And but I was just wondering if you know in the Oakmont region or somewhere in Santa Rosa where they have good Asian food and particularly Chinese dumplings, which I now go to Terraville Street in San Francisco to get. And then the other one would be, what about Thai or curries? Anybody who makes good curries? And also Mexican, any good Mexican? And what about Italian? I like
That's a lot of
roast-
questions. No,
and
that's
then
good, yeah.
finally, how come, I mean, the prices at like the Starks restaurants and most restaurants are extremely high as a result of the pandemic. Are they going to come down? I mean, you probably don't know, but is that because their costs have gone up or they have less business? Will they ever go back if they're?
All right, those are a lot of questions. I'll answer as quick, as succinctly as I can. There's a story that I recently was talking about or did about the $20 turkey sandwich. So I was talking to a chef, and for a turkey sandwich that uses, local turkey and local made bread and local produce and all that stuff, his sandwich should cost him about $20. It should sell for over $20 for him to make any profit at all, because the prices of meat have doubled because of supply shortages. Yeah, farmers are going out of business. The reason the prices are as high as they are is not because restaurateurs are greedy or they're making a ton of money. Most of them are living off 5% profit margins. The cost of employment has skyrocketed. There are no people to hire right now. Many people in the restaurant business, your servers, your back of house people, have gone into construction or other jobs that pay better. So restaurants are in a real pickle right now. And unfortunately, that shows up as very high costs. If you find food that's cheap, it's probably because it's cheap. It's commodity stuff. It's not high quality. They may be using very cheap labor, not paying wages that they can live on. So there's many reasons. And unfortunately, as Americans, we're very used to cheap food. We're probably going to have to get used to spending a lot more money for our food. And I know that that's a stinky answer. I can't afford to go to most restaurants on my own salary. It's tough. But unfortunately, if we're going to support our restaurants, we're going to support our farmers and we're going to support our ranchers. That's how much it's going to cost. As for some of these other things, I mean, please, you can visit sonomamag.com. There's a lot of restaurants there. Thai, the best Thai, real Thai, is called Khum Loi. It's Khom. Yeah, it is. It is. Around here. Yeah, it's okay. See Thai Bistro in Montgomery Village. It's pretty good. Okay. So what else? Thai? I don't really have any other like big favorites. A lot of them are just sort of average. They're too sweet. They're just kind of, I don't know. Do you guys have a favorite? I mean,
There's speaking from the Zoom group, how about Vietnamese?
Vietnamese. Okay, Vietnamese. Well, oh, boy, you caught me off guard here. I haven't had Vietnamese in a little while. Does anybody have a Vietnamese? Like, stoke my memory here. I can't think of anything right off the top of my head at this exact moment. Where do I
Well,
put it?
Goji has some
Yes,
Vietnamese.
yes, they have some really good stuff. I like goji. You know, that's one that's good because it has kind of a mix. It's a Pan-Asian, Japanese, or Chinese, Thai, Vietnamese. I think those are all really good.
Can you
There's-
spell those? Can you spell those two? The Kum Lai and the Goji?
Komloi is KHOMLOI. And
Where?
goji,
Where's Kum Lai?
goji is
Where's that located? Kum Lai.
Komloi,
Yeah.
Sebastopol.
Oh, okay.
Goji is GOJI. That's in Santa Rosa. Oh, I've got a great one for you guys. Corner Park Cafe. Oh, yes. Corner Park Cafe. Now that place, it's a donut shop in Vietnamese. And they are doing some really good stuff. Although I've noticed that their prices have skyrocketed lately because everybody goes there. And right next to that is Lepes, which has some very good Mexican, I think. Lepes, Lepes. You guys have probably all been there, right? Fish tacos. I really like them a lot.
Okay, can I take a question from the here? Raina, you had a question I thought would be good. Do you want to unmute yourself or do you want me to ask it?
Also a gal in the back.
Could you ask it, please?
Sure. Sometimes I don't feel like cooking and don't want a burger or a pizza. Can I get a good, well-balanced meal, lots of veggies and unfried meats in some casual, informal setting around here?
Oh. Okay, I'm thinking. Okay, one place that I really like is called Zoftig, Zoftig. Yes, I'm getting an amen on that. Okay, Zoftig has great sort of make your own salads. It's a east-west. Oh, yes. So let me finish Zoftig, but that's another one too. Zoftig has lots of salads. They have some wraps. It's a chef. It's very, very, very good. East West is another one I go and I get the meze plate and I love it with the beet hummus. So good. That's a great suggestion. No dinner, sorry. Yeah.
We have a question from the burger audience.
I remember going to Healdsburg as a child, and it has changed so incredibly and gotten very expensive.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the Barlow, that's something I would like to try, but I think it's Healdsburg is. I know it is. Yeah. But my question is, are there any reasonably priced restaurants in Healdsburg that are worth going to?
Reasonably. I like El Farolito and the mole place.
Spelling,
Agave.
please.
What?
Spelling.
El Farolito, Farolito, I believe.
Okay.
If you could help me out here. And then Agave, Agave. Both of those are Mexican, great mole, reasonably, priced for Healdsburg. There's also kind of a fun thing now called Quail and Condor. Quail like the bird and Condor. And it's a new bakery that's just opened up there. And, it's stellar. It's some chefs from Single Thread that just opened it. But I always think stuff like that's kind of fun. You can go get a great croissant from a really great chef and it's reasonably priced. Not much else in Healdsburg now that I can think of. Everything's pretty outrageous at this point.
Okay, we had one comment that I'm going to pass on and then a
I'll
question.
get to you back there for sure. I see you.
The comment, when you do reviews, request that you please include where possible references to accessibility.
Oh, that's a good-
Okay, it is an issue for a lot of us here that we may be stuck with a walker or some other limitation.
Okay.
Okay, second, the
Most
actual question,
restaurants, they have to be accessible. I mean,
there's accessible and there's accessible.
okay, okay.
I think,
No, that's a really good point. Thank you.
yeah, wear your walker hat and think about
Right.
how comfortable you feel or don't feel.
No, my mom has a walker, and you're right. I need to be more aware of that. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Okay, the other question was,
Sarmentine, that's really good.
all of us in Oakmont have been waiting for Oak to open. Okay,
don't
Oak
know what that
being
is.
the restaurant of the golf club,
Oh,
and it's just opened. What is your thoughts with regard to what they need to do to be successful?
wow. Well, this is a subject that's actually come up recently in my own household. My husband and my dad and my brother are all avid golfers and bemoan the lack of a restaurant out in Bennett Valley. That's a tough question. I think for me, it has to appeal to people that just want to go there, that aren't golfing, that just want to stop by and have, a snack or lunch or something. It's not going to survive if you don't have a loyal following that aren't there golfing. But I just heard, and I have not been there. If anyone has, I'd love to know. There's a golf course out just past Guerneville, that course out there, and apparently they have a little restaurant. And I heard that it's very good. I think it's just about being simple. Northwoods, yeah. It's about keeping things simple. Don't overcomplicate them. There's also a pretty good restaurant at the Windsor Golf Club. Just keeping things simple. I think having brunch is a great plan for people, for people to go who aren't golfing. I didn't know about the restaurant opening out here. When's it supposed to open?
Last week,
Oh,
We have one last question.
Heather, can you recommend a Greek restaurant and a good Himalayan restaurant?
oof. Greek. Well, no, because there was one down near Petaluma, and it's gone. I don't know any Greek restaurants at this point. East West does have some of that sort of Middle Eastern, and we are getting a whole bunch of new Middle Eastern spots. The Falafel Hut downtown. Middle Eastern seems to be something that's coming up. I know that's an all-encompassing term, but if that's that kind of flavor is what you like. What was the other question? Forgot already. Himalayan. Oh. I know everybody likes that place out in Glen Ellen. I've heard that's, I think, the most popular one that I've heard of. And I think they opened one in Santa Rosa as well. Yeti. I've been like, it's okay. They're okay. I think people are trying to do too many things. Do one thing and do it well. Don't try to be everything to everyone.
Well, Heather, thank you so very much. This is the kind of topic that many of us would love to have some personal time with you to talk
Sure.
about
Well,
questions.
feel free to email me.
So as you leave, remember we have these donation boxes and we would be grateful for any donation. So thank you all for coming, and thank you, Heather Irwin.
Thank you.
Thank you.